We'll go. Okay, so ready, be quiet.
Hi everyone, thank you so much for joining us. First of all, if you have been sitting by your computer waiting for us to start, we did start, but we had some technical difficulties and realized we actually weren't live like we thought. So it's kind of ironic that this video is going to be about time management, and we've already altered your time a little bit.
Good point.
But yeah,
Our apologies.
Yes. We'll talk about how to overcome things like that. I'm Ariel Vaughn with MSBCoach, and today I have Michelle Braden with me to discuss time management, and she is the president and CEO of MSBCoach. So I'm really excited to have her join me today to hear some more, because I know she manages a busy schedule and is very impressive, so she's got lots of tips and tricks to share with us. So Michelle?
Yeah. Well, it's first of all, Ariel, it's so fun to be here. We started in January doing these Facebook Lives once a month, and the first couple we did together, and then we invited in some of our other coaches, some of our clients, and it's really been fun. It's been brand new for us. Before, we always did webinars, and so this has been a new thing. I haven't been able to be at one for about the last 6 months. They've been amazing though. So I'm excited to actually be here and to be talking about a subject that I am personally really passionate about, because I know how impactful it is in people's lives to, get a hold of this and manage it.
Definitely.
So, yeah.
So let's talk about time management. What does that mean to you?
So when I think about managing my time, to me it means managing my life.
Yeah.
Because time is one thing, it's one resource that we all have the exact same amount of. So when we think about other resources, some people have more education, some people may have more money, some people may have more common sense, some people may have more family support.
Right.
But time, we all have 24 hours in a day. We can't make it any longer or any shorter than that. So to me, it's a shared commodity that we all have to learn how to manage.
Definitely, yeah, that's such a good point. Like, we all have the same amount of time, but it's really what we do with that time that impacts our quality of life.
Right.
Yeah. So what has your journey with time management been like? You always been good at managing your time, or?
Well, what do you think? Yes, I said it the first time we thought we were live, and we weren't yet. I said, of course, I've always been amazing at managing my time, and if you believe that, I'll sell you some oceanfront property in Arizona. But no, I think just like listening. So some people may be better at being quiet, but that doesn't make them a good listener. Some people may be a little more inclined to be a better listener, but we can all extremely improve it. I think the same thing with time management. Some people may be a little better to manage their time, but it is a journey. And I think it's a journey not only of learning, but just like leadership is a journey, because things in our lives are changing. So being able to make adjustments, even our own energy changes. So I think about even in my own personal life, just in the last couple of years, I've had to make adjustments. So we had a period of time where my husband and I were empty nesters. We both were 100% of our energy focused on our business and each other. And then we had some family, which is absolutely wonderful, but we've had family move closer around us, and we've wanted to, but we've also had to be intentional to make adjustments so that we have time together. But yeah, so that's my philosophy around time management, and it has been a learning process. I think when I was in my late 20s was one of the biggest ahas in the beginning of the ahas for me in time management. It was one of my first leadership positions, and I was working for an organization that put us through a full week of training before they even put us out on the floor. And part of that was time management. Actually, a huge part of it. First 3 days of it were all about time management, calendaring, And I really learned a lot in there. They talked even about Covey's, important versus urgent, and, and how to do blocking, and how even when we're traveling, if you're going to go to the north side of town, to make all your appointments at that, time in one place, rather than going north, south, east, and west and coming back to the north, or, visiting places that were closest to your house before you, headed into the office. So, some things now that when I hear them just seem like common sense, but at the time it was very new information to me. So that was probably my first learning experience around time management. It wasn't until later, and I know we're going to talk about this a little later, but it wasn't until later in life that I learned the difference between time management, which I think would be 101, and energy management, which is a whole different level of time management.
Okay. So let's kind of go into that a little bit. What exactly do you mean by energy management, and how is that different from time management?
Yeah. So because we do all have that same amount of time, there may be something that I'm working on in the day that completely gives me energy.
Yeah.
You could be working on the exact same thing and it drains your energy.
Right.
So if we're working on the same thing from 9 until 11, at the end of that, at 11 o'clock, let's say we've gotten it done, I'm energized.
Yeah.
And you're drained. So that's energy management. So for me, I'm energized. I'm ready to go do some more. You're drained. You need to go do something that's going to fuel you back up.
Right.
And so being really, I think energy management is about, it doesn't mean that we don't do hard things at work. There are going to be some things at work that we have to do that drain our energy, that we don't love.
Right.
Now, hopefully you're in a job where you love the majority of what you do. If the majority of what you do is draining, let's talk. It might not have the right fit. Even if you're doing good at it, it might not be the right fit if everything's draining your energy.
Right.
So recognizing the things that drain our energy, and then how do I give back to myself? So for example, and this is why we make a great team, there are things that you do that would totally drain my energy. If I was doing the books for 2 hours, I would just be, I could do it. I have the capability, but I would be wiped out. So let's just say hypothetically I had to do that one day. The best thing I could do is give myself breaks. So I've learned this. This is the energy management piece. So I still have this task to do. I know this task is going to drain me. So every hour I'm going to give myself a reward. So what gives me energy? Go outside and take a walk, get some fresh air. For me, may be different for each of you. No, that's the self-awareness piece of emotional intelligence.
Right.
Self-awareness is knowing what it is. Self-management then is managing that energy and ultimately managing the time.
Right.
So for me, I would go and take a walk, get a cup of coffee, and then when I finished it, I would get a biscotti with chocolate on it, because that would be the real reward, which then it would give me back energy.
Right.
So I think it sounds silly, but it really is about marrying in the things that give you energy with the things that drain your energy. And Ariel, I think it's so interesting to think about, we can even do things that we love and it still drain our energy.
Right.
So for example, I love facilitating sessions.
Yeah.
But if I had to do 3 or 4 in a row in a week's time, like I have a colleague right now who's doing multiple in a row, and I just think, oh my Lord, I would be exhausted. And then going out with the team members afterward, I mean, by day 1 at about 7 o'clock at night, I would have hit the wall. So, let alone doing it all week. And so, but yet that's something I love. So I would have to figure out how to fit in some quiet time for myself. Sometimes to take a walk, some time to do some yoga, or something that refueled me, even though I love that thing and those people that I'm with. So I think that to me is energy management, and I've been doing most of the talking, so I'm going to toss the ball to you, and I want to hear what you think time management and energy management is.
Oh wow, putting me on the spot.
That's right.
Well, I just love what you're saying, because it really sounds like there's this good balance of managing your time to complete the task, but then also putting things in there that will give you energy, especially if you're doing a task that's more energy draining, finding like that balance, to take a walk or go outside, and then get back to another task. So you're still managing your time, but also your energy at the same time. Like, I think that's really an interesting way to look at it, because I know so many times when people think about time management, it's just, I need to fill up my calendar and do, complete these different tasks, but you also have to schedule time to do things that you enjoy and fuel you too.
Right.
So I like that balance.
And the fact that we can combine those things together sometimes. So for me, it is very energizing being outdoors and my body moving. So if I have a client who wants to do a walking session, or you and I have even had walking meetings, and if we can get outside and the weather's nice and we're getting fresh air, we're moving our body and getting our brains more engaged as our body is moving, we can actually combine those things,
right.
Which I think can be very energy giving as well. But without the self-awareness and the discipline to take the time to figure those things out, I think time management just becomes this daunting task. And although I do think learning and education and reading books and applying those skills that work for other people is important, we have to find our own place.
Right.
Each one of us has to find what works for us and what is beneficial for us, because we know ourselves better than anybody else.
Right, exactly. And I kind of like that leading into of like knowing yourself and being self-aware, and everything doesn't work for everybody. So what are some like practices that you've developed to kind of keep track of your schedule and manage everything that you have going on?
Yeah. Well, one thing I know for sure is probably what's been the biggest teacher for me is failure.
Yeah.
Where I've burned the candle at both ends too extremely. And so I'm really aware of how it impacts me. Typically, I don't usually get sick, thank goodness. knock on fake wood from IKEA, but I don't.
Yeah.
And so, but when I do, it's when I've been burning the candle at both ends too hard. Also, when I get forgetful, when I start getting irritable and short-tempered, and I don't like who I'm being, so I know who else, certainly nobody else around me is going to like who I'm being. It's because I haven't been managing my energy properly.
Yeah.
So I've learned, even with work travel, I like to travel with work, but I don't want to travel all the time. And when I do too much of it, I start getting really short and irritable. I'm not as good for my clients. I'm not as good for myself. I'm not as good for my family. So it really is being aware of that. And sometimes it's just trial and error.
Yeah.
That's so important for us. But in that trial and error, really being self-aware of what's giving me energy, what's draining my energy, and how do I manage these things. I'm huge on calendaring. I used to, so you asked me what worked in the past and what works now.
Yeah.
I used to be a big to-do list person, so I still love crossing off the list. Like I get a dopamine hit, I have to admit. It's like my brain lights up when I cross something off the list.
Yeah.
However, I found that those lists could become very daunting. So something that I started, goodness, it was probably about the time we started this business about 10 years ago. And I would have those lists, and for a couple of years it was just like exhausting, and I went through a lot of notepads. And I moved to what is now called calendaring.
Okay.
So I put on the calendar, and I literally block time. Some of that time may even be think time, or time where I need to reach out and follow up with clients. And then once I do follow up with them, I don't know if they're going to respond or not, so I don't get to cross that off the list.
Right.
So that means I'll skip, I still use old-fashioned calendar. So for those of you who use an electronic calendar, you go forward a couple of weeks and then make a note again. Find where do you have that space that you're going to follow up with clients. Make a note on there, to then follow up. Now it's not crossed off, but you can breathe easy. You sent the email, you put on you calendared when you were going to follow up. And I've become huge on block calendaring.
Okay.
And what I mean by that is, if there are times where I need to work on think time and focus my energy on writing, say we're going to be writing blogs or something, I'll block off 2 or 3 hours for that, and I won't have anything that's going to take any energy from me before that, because I know that really takes a lot of my focus time, and I need it to be very quiet, emails turned off, so that I can focus my energy on that. So that's an example of some things I've shifted over time.
That's awesome. Yeah, I like that you schedule that time, but then also still have that balance of, I need this time beforehand to, not do the things that drain me, because I'm going to need more energy at this time.
Yeah.
So what about for someone who if that doesn't work for them, are there any other tips and tricks that you might have that you've seen other leaders kind of implement to manage their time?
Well, and that's the interesting thing, going back to, and you and I have even talked, here at MSBCoach about, what are some of the different things you as a young professional coming into your career and learning how to manage a lot of juggling parts, just like with different people that we coach and work with. So I can share my experience and I can share what has worked for me, but that may or may not work for you.
Yeah.
So I still know and work with a lot of leaders who use the to-do list, whether it's virtual or in reality. So a lot of people use their to-do list on their phones that they look back at. I know others will set alarms. So certain alarms will go off on their phone that reminds them of things. I think the one thing that is most important is not that it's not always in the moment. It's looking out across the big picture. And what I mean by that is, okay, what do I have this week? What did I maybe put on there that some other things have come up that I need to move around, and being able to be nimble and be flexible.
Yeah.
And so if something unexpected came up and I had blocked time for X, that doesn't mean that X goes away.
Right.
I have to figure out, where to put it someplace else. And so I think for any of us, no matter what our style is, it's really important to do that. Otherwise, that's where things start falling through the cracks. We start losing credibility. We get panicky ourselves, and then we find ourselves in this stressed out place where now time is controlling us instead of us controlling time.
Right.
And I think that's the important thing, is whatever works for you to feel like you are in control of yourself and your calendar instead of your calendar's in control of you. Now, I do know so many people in corporate now, they're not in charge of their calendar.
Right.
Somebody can jump on there and and fill in the blanks. The only thing I would say to that, and I know this depends too on what level that you're at, that you're able to sometimes that you block to say, unless it's our CEO, this time is sacred, and not to be messed with. Because if we don't create boundaries, then no one's going to respect them, because there are no boundaries, so they don't even know what to respect on our calendars.
Definitely. And I like that you say that there might be times where you have to be more flexible in your time, or things that need to get moved, and you of course you want to create a schedule, but things don't always go as planned, so you still have to be open to change and kind of deal with that. And you mentioned boundaries, so tell me what kind of boundaries should people set to help manage their time and energy better?
Well, and so I'm sharing my philosophies. I'm not saying mine are correct. I'm sharing what works for me. I think one of the places we've hurt ourselves in the corporate world is with the open door policy. So I think we have a tendency to let the pendulum swing from one extreme to the other. So back in the Mad Men era, with doors closed and people could do whatever the heck they wanted to do behind those closed doors, I think that was ridiculous, right, and extreme. But I think also the fact that you can walk into my office at any point in time is also a little bit extreme.
Right.
And that doesn't mean that as a leader I'm not approachable. It just means there are times I need focus time. There are times I need to be working on things. If I was sitting in the meeting, if I was in my room with a coaching client, you wouldn't walk in. Right. So why is it if I'm sitting there working on something that it's okay for people to walk in? So I think especially with the era that we're in of people trying to manage so much email traffic coming in and not even having time to really think at all, or even plan their calendar. I think that's where it's even more important to say, hey, during these times of the day, I'm not available. And honoring that to me, I guess the question was, what would be a boundary?
Right.
That's examples of what I feel are healthy boundaries.
Definitely, and just communicating that with your team, and
that's the key, is that you communicate. It's being proactive, not reactive. So it's not like somebody walks in and you're like, giving them that snarl and that look, like, what the heck are you doing here? But so if we communicate that proactively, people, it's amazing. You'd be surprised how much they respect that and appreciate that.
Right. Yeah, I bet. So what about let's discuss some examples of the impact of time management, whether it's a leader's like lack of time management or they were really successful at managing their time. What kind of impact have you, like, do you have a good example of where it went really well or really impacted the team negatively?
So yes, I have a couple of those. It's interesting because I was just talking with a client last week, and one of the things that this client brought up, and this client sits on an executive level team, that there are team members, and this leader's feedback was, there are just other members on this executive team that do not respect each other's time. And I said, well, tell me more about that. What does that look like? Well, to them, so if this is a leader who is, if we say we're starting at 10 o'clock, if you're not there at 9:55, you're late. And I can totally respect and honor that. Other people live in the ish world, so they're like, it's 10 o'clock, I'll come in at 10:15. Well, what they didn't know is that they're really unintentionally impacting their credibility. And they're causing disrespect among their team members who don't see it that way, even at the highest level. So it goes back to what do we want our leadership brand to be? How do we want to be perceived? Do we want to be perceived as disrespecting people's time? Even if that goes to that thing of intention and impact, even if that's not our intention, but if that's how we're impacting others, then it's going to hurt our reputation.
Definitely.
I have yet to meet a leader that starts and ends on time that people are like, I can't stand them, because there's the other extreme too, right? There's leaders who go way too long. So a meeting's supposed to end at noon, and at 12:35, people are just like, oh my gosh, are we going to get out of here?
Right.
And that is equally exhausting and daunting.
Right.
So going back to the word fluid, I think that we do need to be fluid. We need to read who's in the room, even ask permission. Hey, you guys, this conversation's going really well, but we said we were going to end at noon. Should we table it and pick it back up in our next meeting? Or are you open to, the energy's good, should we keep going? So it's really tapping into those coaching skills. And then going back to that brand. What do I want my brand to be? Do I want to look like every time I'm walking through the hallways, my hair's on fire?
Right.
Because I can't, if I can't control my time and my schedule, I'm going to be perceived as a leader without self-control. At least that's the impact that I've seen. I have yet to see it any different from that.
Yeah, that's really interesting that you say that. And I guess I'm also now curious about how do you deal with, because when you think of time management, you think of like your own time and how you're managing your own schedule. But with leaders, they have meetings all day. So how does that impact when other people are, taking too much time, or how do you manage that? You know?
And that, that's one thing, and we've worked a lot with leaders with this in coaching. And part of it is things that I've worked through as well. But being proactive on that. So in the meeting, honoring start times, end times, so that people can honor their calendar. Also honoring, some people are okay with you just popping into their cubicle or popping into their office, and other people are really uncomfortable with that. They'd rather have an email that says, are you available today at 2? And so that comes to adjusting your leadership style for the people that you're going to be meeting with and working with. Same thing for yourself. So if somebody pops into your office and it's not a good time, to say, let's just say, Ariel, you popped into my office and you're like, hey, could we talk for a few minutes? If I were to say, well, we can, but I only have 15 minutes. So I just need us to honor that. So I'm being very proactive rather than you come in and after an hour I'm agitated and I'm fidgeting and I'm frustrated with you and you don't even know why, because I said, sure, I have time to talk.
Right, yeah.
So I think the more proactive we can be in communicating our message and what we need, and being receptive and respectful to what other people want and need, would be very beneficial for all of us in managing our time and energy.
Right, yeah. And I feel like it just always goes back to communication is key, and self-awareness is key, and being aware of others as well. Like they just always intermingle with each other, even with time management. So it's very interesting. And you brought up some of your coaching clients' experiences. What have you seen usually is kind of the reason why people are stuck with time management, or what's kind of like that stumbling block when it comes
Yeah.
to managing time and energy?
So some of the biggest thing that I have seen is lack of self-awareness. So lack of being able to manage your energy has been a big one. So that, hey, turn the lens inward and take a look at what's giving you energy, what's draining your energy, and then begin the management from there. One of the others is, the massive emails. So some of the things that I've worked on with leaders are, do you have to be CC'd on everything?
Right.
Have you created this monster? And what can you do to unravel the monster so you're reducing the different emails that come in? Are you blocking time to check email, or are you just checking it nonstop? Because if you're checking it nonstop, we train people that as soon as you write me, you're going to hear back from me. Now, if that's your style and that works for you, that's fine. But we can also train people that, I check during these times and these times. So it may be 3 or 4 hours before you hear from me.
Right.
If it's a crisis, pick up the phone and call me or come down to my office. But otherwise, here's when I check my emails. And that's something that's been around for a while. But I think very few leaders have actually embraced that. Our phones have become another appendage to us, that we're just constantly checking our phones. And that doesn't, like I said, your style, you figure out what works for you. But I found blocking does work a little better. And also recognizing I don't need to be included. If I have that need, that's a whole nother conversation.
Right.
Why am I not trusting my people? Why am I micromanaging? Why do I feel like I need to be in the know of everything? So we've got a whole different thing that we're working with there.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely. So
Yeah.
it sounds like, one, setting expectations, but in kind of setting the precedence of, do you respond, or what times do you respond? So
And that self-awareness of managing energy. So being self-aware and then self-managed.
Yeah.
And then, but I think we would be remiss if we also didn't talk about the other 2 pieces of emotional intelligence, which are socially aware. How your energy is managed and what you want and need is very different than what I want and need, but I need to respect that in you, and vice versa. Yeah. So then that enhances our relationship rather than breaking it down.
Definitely. Awesome. And then I also wanted to just mention about almost like some delegation happens in there too, with what do you need to be a part of and what don't you? And,
Right.
Yeah.
And there's a big piece of trust there with that. If I hand it off, then can I trust that this is going to be taken care of? And so for leaders to be able to do that, so they don't feel like they have to be chasing down and micromanaging. And if they are, what's going on here?
Right.
That's what we need to take a look at more than the time management piece.
Right. Yeah. And that's interesting that it's other factors
Right.
play a part into what shows up as a time management thing when it could be something else.
Right, which is huge.
Yeah.
That's we need to have another Facebook Live on that. What are we blaming on time management that is actually a whole different challenge?
Yeah. And then I was going to ask you kind of, how does coaching help people with time management? But you've, sort of have said things that people can work on and kind of look into. But do you have any other info you want to share?
Well, I think one of the biggest things, and as you know, not just because I run a coaching organization, I was fortunate to be a part of coaching years before I ever started this company. So I'm just a strong advocate of that because it helps us to uncover blind spots. And so that's the thing, there's a saying that says a problem well defined is a problem half solved.
Yeah.
So if we're solving the wrong problem, if we're blaming time management as our problem, and really we're not effectively delegating, or we're not effectively setting good boundaries, no matter how much we're trying to work on our time management, we're never going to have enough time.
Right.
Or if we're procrastinating, if we're constantly procrastinating and putting things off, well, that's a whole different challenge than hey, let me learn some tricks and techniques to calendar and make things work more effectively for me. So I think peeling that onion in the coaching session is really helpful to help people identify what it is that they really need to work on. So what is time management about? It's about having a full, fulfilled life.
Right.
That my work can be fulfilling, but also my personal life and my private life, whatever that pie of life looks like for you, can be finding equilibrium for you. Yeah.
That's great. So what other advice would you share with someone who is looking to work on either their time management skills or even managing their team members and stuff? What advice would you share?
Well, I think, with the team members, practicing the platinum rule. And that is, do unto others as they would have done unto them. So get to know them. help them become more self-aware. But then going back to self, we have to do that for ourselves first before we can help others. I can't be a guide through the jungle that I've never been in myself. So to work that out for ourselves. But I'll kind of ping pong this back to you, Ariel, because this is something that I know that you and I have talked about. And you've done some things, just like I shared in my journey, some things I've done. You've done some things in your journey over the last year and a half. In your professional development of managing time. So what are some things that, because you're very different personality-wise from me, so what are some things that you have tried and have worked effectively?
Well, I'm definitely still on my time management journey, and like you kind of mentioned earlier, it's trial and error and failing a little bit. But I think one of the things that I do now that makes me feel like I am in more control of my time is I like making lists and crossing things off. And I definitely love your calendaring and scheduling time to do it. That doesn't work for me right now. Maybe one day it will.
You like the theory, not in practice? And that's okay.
Yeah.
That's a perfect example of something that works for one person doesn't work for someone else.
Right, exactly. But what I like to do is really focus my time. It's like, have you heard of the Pomodoro technique? So it's like where you just set your clock for 25 minutes and you're focused on one thing. So I don't know, I feel like I'm always very unique. I do my own thing, but I set my clock and then just kind of go through my checklist, or I spend that time checking emails, I'm going to respond to all these in these 25 minutes, and then you're supposed to take a 5-minute break. But if I'm feeling good, I actually will set my alarm again, but that just helps me focus in, and I turn my phone on silent, or I won't, answer anything else that comes in. I focus on the thing that's on my list that I want to get done. So, it's still kind of working that trial and error and setting the times that I will work on it. But that's something that I've been finding has been really helpful. Has been, making that list and then setting that focus time to just focus on getting that list kind of done. So.
And there's that reward at the end. So at the end of 25 minutes, you get to take a 5-minute break.
Right.
So there's that reward. Or, hey, I'm feeling good, I'm going to keep on going.
Yeah.
Which can also be a reward. We can get that dopamine hit too when we're getting things done. And I've heard so many different philosophies. The philosophy of, do the hard things first, and do the thing you hate the most at in the morning. I found sometimes that works for me, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes I need to hit a few home runs, first. So I'm all right, I'm going to get up and knock out these 15 emails, and then I feel good. So then I feel like I can tackle the harder things. So that just goes to your own self-awareness. Just because it works for someone else doesn't necessarily, don't feel bad if it doesn't work for you. But don't give up either. Keep trying different things, or work with a coach, work with a mentor, to find some things. And if the things you're trying aren't working, maybe there's some deeper rooted challenge that you might want to take a look at.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's just so important to really have that self-awareness piece to know what works for you, and it does take time to kind of figure that out and try new things, but also to communicate with others too. Because it is good to get other ideas and try what may work for someone and see if it works for you too. So,
well, I'll throw out a couple of other tips out there that these have definitely been tried by fire for me, learning the hard way. But I know when I have an early morning, I will lay my clothes out the night before, because my brain is not as good super early in the morning. So I don't even want to have to think.
Right.
So I may even take my shower the night before, or so that all I'm having to do the next day is go on autopilot, put clothes on, get the keys, and I'll even put the keys to the car, right? Because how many of us have been walking out the door and we can't find the keys,
right?
And then we're rushing like a maniac, and by the time we get to where we're going, we're in a frenzy, and we don't get to be that centered best self. So I think one of the biggest things that I've learned with time management is being proactive. How proactive can I be, looking ahead and thinking ahead? Am I going to be driving? Is my car full of gas? Or, oh my gosh, have I gotten in the car and realized I'm, driving to Richmond and I've only got 20 miles left and now I have to stop.
Right.
And so, just as much as you can be proactive about will actually help create more peacefulness for you. Now, because I travel frequently, I keep my toiletry bag full in my suitcase. There's just a couple little go-to things. I'm sure they think at the airport I wear the same thing all the time, but it's comfortable, it's convenient, and so it's just on autopilot, so I don't have to put that I want to put energy other places.
Right, yeah.
Than into that. So going back to that energy management, where do you want to put your energy? So just a couple extra little freebie tips.
Yeah. And to kind of go along with that, I love like being proactive and planning to make things easier. And we actually just finished, listening to First Things First by Stephen Covey. But one of the things in there, the focus was just, to plan ahead and like know where you want to be in your future, because that also helps you, plan how you're going to do things now and like what's important to get there. So even with simple things like traveling, you plan for that, but if you have like a goal, you still need to plan for that and do the things that help you there. So I just thought that was like another way to kind of help with time management, is really deciding on, like what you need to do or where you need to be. So that kind of helps with that too.
And that book, if you haven't read that, I recommend that you read it, but it goes really deep to what are our values,
right? Which
is an important thing for a leader to, identify, because is how I'm managing my time in alignment with my values,
right?
Or even is the energy, the organization that I'm with, because some organizations they have a culture of, people come in at 7:00 and they work till 7:00. And there's nothing wrong with that necessarily, but if it doesn't align with your values, then that's probably not the best company for you to be at.
Right.
So, just some of those things, thinking about our values alignment and how they align with where we're working,
right,
are important too.
Yeah. I feel like we could talk about this all day.
But it's time, isn't it?
Any last words of wisdom you would like to share?
No. Well, actually, what I would love to hear is if some of you have tips, and what's worked for you, what hasn't worked for you. I love talking to different personality types, because then we learn, like, I know my way is right for me, but it may not be right for someone else. And I love hearing, what's worked for you and someone else. So if you have some things that you'd like to share, write them in, or, let us know. Help us sharpen the saw to be even better coaches with other people too.
Yeah, definitely leave us some comments with what you all do or what you think of the tips that we've shared. And if you want any information on our coaching to work on your time and energy management, you can visit our website, MSBCoach.com, or email us, info@MSBcoach.com. And join us next time. We'll be talking about community focus. Until then, thank you so much for joining us and watching us live or the replay. Let us know, and we'll see you then.
All right, bye everybody. Thanks.